What are you doing to me? Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
See what happens when you're
You know, that's what happens when you're royalty, Queen Kitsy.
That's correct.
That's
You
right.
fluff my hair.
The Queen of Bluegrass, right there. Is everybody ready? Yeah. Okay. Oh, you want one more? Jerry.
Come on without him, Jerry.
No bourbon. I am here under protest. There's no bourbon in the John Duffey cup. Perhaps his spirit already drank it.
That's why they call it spirit, because that's all you get. Your spirit.
I used to date John Duffey.
You have my sympathies.
I think there might be some good stories here.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta tell you. And I'm like, you know, it's really a treat when you see your friends here on the stage at the Creekside. Akira has been a friend of Gray Fox Warehawk for a really long time. He is so busy around here. He's been working with the Bluegrass Academy for Kids over the years. And, you know, I don't know anybody that isn't Akira's friend. You may know him from his work with a band called Bluegrass 45. A really great musician and, like I said before, a great friend of Bluegrass and Gray Fox. And we're going to have a little discussion today, and it's going to be moderated by Tim Kruzic. Tim is a friend of DC Bluegrass, and I guess if he's a friend of DC music, DC Bluegrass music, which is really where the seldom scene really took root, was in the DC area pretty much. If you're a friend there, then you've got to be a friend here, right? We're really happy to have him here to talk about a really nice new release that's getting accolades all over the world that Akira was instrumental in putting together, and it's called Epilogue. It's a tribute to Jim Duffey, and they're going to tell you all about it. Please welcome our friends, Akira Otsuka. Akira, I didn't need to. I practiced and everything. It's Akira, everybody. And Tim Kruzic. Welcome back.
Man, thank you all for coming out. This is great. We're here to celebrate really two things in my mind. One is John Duffey himself. In the liner notes, Katie Daly wrote, whenever he played it was a show and he was the ringmaster. So we're going to have some great stories about John Duffey. We're going to introduce the folks up here as we go. But I think it's a watershed time. Some of the younger folks that might be less than 22 years old when John died in '96, they wouldn't have been born, don't even know about him or what he did. And Akira and Ronnie Freeland put out this project called Epilogue. It's been a long time coming, and I'm really fortunate that I got to listen to the mixes as this thing went through the process all the years I've been over at Akira's house. In fact, Akira's been a friend of mine. He was the first real up-close bluegrass musician I saw in 1973, about a couple months after I got my banjo. He was playing in a band called the Grass Menagerie. And my bona fides, anybody have an 8-track player I can find? I have the Caravan CD of the Bluegrass 45, CD, excuse me. This is the 8-track. This is the 8-track of Caravan. By the way, John Duffey produced this album for the Bluegrass 45. So, anyway, I want Akira to talk some about how he got into bluegrass and got to the United States, and how John Duffey became such a big part of his life, and then we're going to talk about different parts of the project. So Akira, why don't you start us off and tell us a little bit about bluegrass in Japan in the 45 and what got you here?
So glad to see a lot of John Duffey fans here. I started playing mandolin around 63 or 64 in Japan. And of course I listened to Bill Monroe and Ronnie Reno and other people. But when I heard Duffey with a couple of gentlemen, it was right to me. Bill Monroe was hard to figure it out. But when I heard John, it was like, I like this. And I thought,
That's John. He says there's no bourbon in my toddy.
I believe that'd be a whiskey sour.
Oh yeah, pardon me.
yeah, show niceness.
Sorry.
Anyway, John was my hero when I was trying to learn mandolin, and I was lucky enough to be invited to come to the stage in '71 by Dick Phelan, who owned Rebel Records back then. And when we got into DC, first night, Dick said, "Yeah, John and Nancy Duffey are coming over for dinner." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, right." They really showed up. I was ready to, maybe I shouldn't say that.
You'll say anything.
Anyway, we had hot dogs and burgers, and then we started playing. And Bluegrass 45 was so scared of John. I mean, he was a hero, especially for me. Anyway, we played, and John was saying, "Let's do Bluebirds Are Singing." Banjo player Sab would kick it off, just like Eddie Adcock did. And I would play John's break, just like he recorded back in '62 or something. I think we impressed him a little bit. 5 boys from Japan knew everything about country gentlemen. And in September, we did this LP for Dick Phelan, second LP for Rebel. And Dick thought maybe it'd be good to have John Duffey produce the album. And I'm glad we did. He gave us songs like "What Am I Doing Hanging Around?" Even though he recorded it again with the Solemn Scene just a few months later. Or he played cymbal on one tune. We had a great time together. Anyway, I moved over here in '73. By the time he had Solemn Scene going on, I used to go and see him every Thursday night at Red Fox Inn in Bethesda. He passed away in '96. And Dick Phelan's son, Ronnie Phelan, I met him in 1970 when they came to Japan. He was 11 years old, but we became good friends. And later on, he became a great recording engineer. We were coming back from IBMA in Louisville, and Ronnie says, "We got to do that album." "Which album?" "I told you that. I don't remember." "John Duffey tribute album." "Hey, that's a great album, but you didn't tell me that." "Yes, I did." "No, I did not." Anyway, at the end of that year, 2002, we had the first session, and then we went back to IBMA in 2003 and recorded James King, Ron Stewart, David Greer, Todd Phillips, and all these people. And then we had to fly to Nashville to record Jerry and John Cowan, and we flew up, drove up to Connecticut and recorded Phil Rosenthal. And, it was a long time coming, but we had so much time, so much fun time recording it.
I want to talk a little bit about the DC scene there for a second, because you mentioned going to see the Seldom Scene. The Red Fox Inn was quite a place, in the Birchmere, and I thought maybe Kitsy could give us a story about John, to talk a little bit about his character. It doesn't have to be about the Red Fox or anything, but
That's good. I never went there.
You didn't go to the Fox?
I went to the Birchmere. I'm a Virginia girl. Don't mess with me.
Well, I went both ways then.
Whatever floats your boat. Anyhow, yeah.
That sounds like what John said.
Well, I met John when he was playing with the Country Gentlemen, and but then really I got to be friends with him when the Seldom Scene started. And there are people that aren't in this crowd but live in Virginia used to call me the Pearl Nest of Great Falls, Virginia, because I had a big home And we had huge parties there all the time, which Akira attended. And Duffey really didn't like to go to parties. He really wasn't interested. But on occasion he would come, and so I got to know him pretty well, and Nancy, and we had good times together. And then my husband died, and somewhere along the line, Mr. Pete Kuykendall decided, oh, I'm sorry, just died. I can't, all right, I couldn't say it. I'll do it. I can do it. Anyhow, for some reason he liked me, and I started dating him, and I really got to know John very well. And so it was a wonderful experience, and they shared a special interest between the two of them because John was married to Marion, and they had Ginger, who is Rick Aldridge's wife, and then Marion married Pete, and then Pete married me.
Are you following all this?
She's her own grandma.
Bluegrass.
That's the National Enquirer side of John Duffey right there.
Another thing is, Pete's first wife was
Oh, Anne.
Anne Hill. She co-wrote a bunch of songs with John Duffey.
That's it.
I believe Bringing Mary Home or Christmas Time
A
Back
bunch of
Home.
them, yeah. It was a small world back then. Now it's a big world. But anyhow, I really enjoyed John's company. We had a lot of fun together. He liked to tease me a lot, and I could tease him right back. So we had a good time. That's how I really first met John and got to know him, and I was honored.
Very good, thank you. This gentleman over here, Ron Thomason, you might know him from the Dry Branch Fire Squad. He was at the Bluegrass Festival. He seems to be the first of a lot of things. It was kind of funny when I was a young pup back, not too long after I was talking about seeing Akira, Katie Daly, who was a DJ on WAMU in Washington, I'd listened to all the shows, and you did a live show on WAMU with somebody, and I'd never even heard of the Dry Branch Fire Squad, but this is the guy. You know, John was an icon the way he led the band. He had a certain way of fronting the band, and anybody that's ever seen the Dry Branch Fire Squad knows this is one unique guy, and that everybody loves the Dry Branch Fire Squad and the way he leads them. So, an interesting thing was, he was the very first person to record on this project. He came in, Akira and Ronnie set up their room down at IBMA when it was in Louisville. They had all Ronnie's equipment, and they invited people in, and this was the first guy they invited in, and he was singing on some of the tracks there. And thought, Ron, you might give us some insight into John Duffey's character, and maybe if he even
John's
impacted.
character, yes, I actually think thank you very much for calling on me.
Love your own.
So, I love John Duffey. I truly did. I wish I could have dated him. And he got me out of a lot of tough spots, and I don't think people knew he always seemed so gruff, didn't he? Like he was going to nail the sound man's hand onto the board. And he had a hammer just to prove it. But when I got my mandolin back in 1978, it was a big event in my life. I had traded an apartment house for it. And I remember telling people not too many years after that, that's when you could still get a mandolin like that for just one apartment. So, the first show we played after I had gotten it, and I was all excited and everything, and John came up and said, I heard you got one of those special mandolins, you know. Yeah, I got excited. I said, why don't you play it and everything? And it sounded just like John Duffey when he did. Yeah, that's just the way it's supposed to go. Wonder if it'll ever sound like that for me. And then I laid it down that very day, leaned it up on a stage, and I picked up my guitar to play a song, and the wind blew it over and broke the curl off the neck. John Duffey came around. I mean, he had a way of knowing how that would make you feel. And he said, let me fix that mandolin for you. And I said, well, John, you I really can't part with it. He said, I'll have it fixed by the next set. I said, but no way you have it fixed by the next set. He said, look, I built a mandolin with nothing but glue and magic markers. And I was so nervous, I didn't even know what part of my mandolin was made of magic markers. But true story, by the second set, John Duffey came back and that curl was glued back on that mandolin. And if you ever seen the back of one of them, they're all black. And he had taken a magic marker and blackened in where he had fixed the mandolin. And it's still there, people. Anybody doubt it? It's still there. But let me just say, I don't want to keep the time going. So many people that knew John so well. But I have 2 or 3 favorite stories, but this is my favorite one. And I think this captures his character more than anything. Evidently, I'm kind of accident prone. This is my 24th broken bone, but I think most of them all came from horse accidents. And so one time I had a really bad horse accident where I had to bandage up my whole head. So literally, I'd gotten home from the hospital. I didn't know anybody would know about this or anything, and I'd broken a shoulder, but mostly I had my head all messed up. I didn't even know how bad it was going to be. And so the phone rings, and my wife at the time, she knew how to answer a phone, I ain't kidding. It's a good thing one of us did. She came in and she said, John Duffey on the phone. And of course I didn't believe it, but it wasn't anything I could say. But I had this little pad she'd given me to write on, and I wrote out best I could. I said, tell him I can't talk. She goes back to the phone, comes back and says, he says he doesn't want you to talk, he wants you to listen. So all go through life knowing that even when I couldn't talk, John Duffey would talk to me. That's great.